Hello, everyone. Welcome back
Hello.
to another studio visit. This is as close as we could get to the Ledge Gallery, given the circumstances, but we wanted to bring in some people. I'm here with co-author of Pass Me By, Ryan Danny Owen. Ryan, want to say hi?
Hello, hello.
And as our guest today, we've brought in a dear friend, Nicole Wolf. Nicole, say hi.
That's me. Hello.
Here you go.
Hello.
We're just whispering at this point, just like
I brought a plant, friend. We will both be watching.
that looks like a healthy ivy, or is that a pothos?
It's a pothos, and it's super happy, and it's super long, and I have to keep like tying it up. It like goes all the way up to my ceiling.
I'm so jealous.
It's massive.
It's beautiful.
I'll give you a cutting if you want.
I honestly would love that. All of my plants died in my recent home move, and it's like
maybe I won't give you a cutting then.
Yeah. Honestly, I used to be really, really good with flowers, and then it just suddenly like I lost the green thumb, I guess, and now I just can't keep a flower alive. I had a gardenia I had for 5.5 years, which isn't a long time, but I am also only 26, so
that's a long time for you.
It's a long time for me.
How long is that in like gardenia years? That's like
it must have been at least 40.
Yeah.
We grew old together.
And then you murdered them in their sleep.
Isn't that all good love stories? Sorry, play Love Story by Taylor Swift. She's not here. She's not listening.
Did you murder her too?
I always thought those, but it is no thanks to me. My partner Sam is a great gardener, and I am horrible. I will like a plant will die, and it'll take me like 3 weeks to even notice that it's gone. I'm just that bad. Anyway, plants aside, Nicole, we were so excited to be in the Arts Commons spaces at the same time. Originally, our residencies actually lined up right on top of each other. So you and I have both had the extended residency experience from home. Would you tell us a little bit about your project that you're working on at Arts Commons?
Absolutely. My project inside Arts Commons is called The Art of Protest, and it mirrors the one outside of Arts Commons, which anyone can still go see right now, which is called The Fall of Chop. And they're both on the same topic. So last summer, myself and a collaborator, Gavin John, who is a conflict journalist living here in Calgary, we noticed things heating up in Seattle following the death of George Floyd. There was a lot of protests calling for police reform. And we kind of were like, hey, it sounds nuts. Let's go. Let's see if they let us pass the border. And for whatever reason, they let two goofy kids with backpacks and a camera and a sketchbook in. We made it over to the protest zone. We got an Airbnb like a block away, and we were communicating with people back here. Gavin's partner provided a lot of intel on the ground. Arts Commons was like providing the documents that said we were there on business. It was a very quick turnaround. We were kind of like within 72 hours, we were like, let's go. We were there, and we spent 2 weeks there interviewing police officers, protesters, and residents, and people who just like stumbled into this 6-block radius of what was called CHOP, Capitol Hill Occupied Protest, or CHAZ, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And we found the alleged warlord, Raz Simone. We asked him a bunch of questions. We identified the leaders of this protest and asked them what, their visions were for the future of their protest, what they wanted changed, what their plans were. And I drew a lot of portraits. Gavin took a lot of photographs. We both took our interviews and we brought them back here. We were around for the fall of CHOP, which was when the police came back and retook the area. And we brought it back here to Calgary and installed it on Stephen Ave in outdoor kiosks for the public to look at and kind of read. And we were very careful to keep our bias or any kind of slant, whether we agreed with it or not, out of the project. We just wanted this to be faces and quotes. so that the public could make up their own mind. And that was the piece. And it's been interesting to watch people react to that, and a mixture of reactions for sure.
Well, to jump off of that, I think, being at Arts Commons and also being so close to City Hall there, that area of space is kind of known for a lot of unrest and for like a lot of very political, very intense conversations. And I'm really fascinated at how you kind of approach making something like this in a space that's so unpredictable about who's going to see it and like who's going to react to it. Because I think I heard that there was some damage done to your exhibition.
Yeah, like within 72 hours of installing it, everything that could be torn down was. And so we reinstalled it, and it was taken down again. And so it was sort of this like interesting play. And I think we also found it interesting to see that it was drawing fire from both ends of the political spectrum. So there were persons who were upset that the protesters' voices were given a platform because they felt that they should not be heard. And then we also had people who were upset that we interviewed police officers for the same reason. Their voices should not be heard. So we found that it was quite a radical thing to just present two perspectives without necessarily stating this is how you should feel about it or this is how you should not feel about it, to just let the public make up their own mind. I don't think people were used to being given that challenge.
I would agree I think, sorry to interrupt you, but I just think it's so interesting that your project has gone so in depth to kind of humanize a movement and kind of really talk about the people who are a part of it in a way that's really, really critical, but also told from like an outsider perspective in a very interesting way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. There were also a lot of people who supported the project and saw that it was important and needed, and it sort of affirmed that the more negative reactions just proved why our project was important. I agree with you with issues like this. The mainstream media perspective is sort of to like take all these individuals and lump them into one thing. And we see them as a mass instead of individuals with personal backstories. It would be reductive to say that we went and captured both sides, because there weren't two sides there. I think the more people we talk to, the more we realize that there was many sides, maybe as people that we met. Everybody had different reasons for what they were doing. And pretty much the only thing I think that could unite the entire experience was no one denied that the death of George Floyd was a tragic, horrible thing. That was the one thing across the sides that people could at least agree on.
Yeah, and the stories on the Arts Commons blog they're just amazing. The stuff that you gathered and the information that you presented is just incredible. I was just reading about the Australian man, I believe.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting position. And also your illustration for that is just beautiful. And it's so interesting to take that photograph and kind of re-portray it in a really interesting and very different way, because you get to see what your perspective is. And that's like the big thing. It's amazing that you took this opportunity to go with your notebook and your journal and just fill that space and find out for yourself, because I don't think a lot of people can do that, and I don't think a lot of people would do that.
It's true. It's a privilege that I would get to go do that, and it is impossible to research every issue. We do have to take a lot of things on faith in the media. But yeah, that story and portrait, yeah, for anyone who wants to read it, go to the Arts Commons webpage. There's a blog on the Fall of Chop, and it's just kind of me talking in first person about my interactions day by day, and with Gavin's perspective there too. And the Australian, he was just a tourist wandering through, and he saw a scuffle break out, and in an attempt to, I guess, break up the fight or like be a good citizen, he pulled out his phone and attempted to record it. And that caused a bigger problem because people thought he was invading their privacy, to like maybe cause trouble or things like that. And long story short, there were a lot of things that happened, but it ended up with him being beaten up substantially and handcuffed to a garbage can. And the protesters who cuffed him to the can did not really want us taking photographs of that. So that was an example of where being able to recreate with drawing was prime, because we couldn't capture that with a camera. So Gavin and I went back to the area later when no one was around and took a picture of the empty garbage can. And then I drew what we saw on top of the photograph. So the exhibition shows some of Gavin's photographs standalone, some of my portraits standalone, and then some of this mashing on top of each other.
No, and Gavin's photos are also just incredible. The level of commitment that you both have to being in those spaces and documenting them in such crucial and intricate ways. I really, again, commend you both, because it's a very intense thing to put yourself through, right?
That's true. I mean, Gavin does have a background in conflict journalism. He has some self-initiated projects in Iraq and Northern Korea. And then I also have some self-initiated projects doing a very similar approach to gathering stories in Turkey during the attempted coup in 2016, which saw the country put under martial law. And then also from Syrian refugee camps in and out for the last 5 or so years, just volunteering as a humanitarian worker, and then capturing stories on my free time. And we find this is a really cool place to exist as a creative. Not a lot of people do get the chance to go in and hear from individuals in these situations. So I think we both felt very grateful that we were able to do it.
Absolutely.
I wanted to tag into the fact that you're like going to these places, and you talked about receiving like multiple perspectives on an issue rather than turning it into this like two sides thing that particularly American media loves to turn things into. I'm like, I don't know if jealous is the right word, but like there's something there compared to what everyone else has been experiencing throughout this past over a year now with this pandemic, where we're not seeing other people and we're living extremely mediated lives where algorithms are determining so much about what we're experiencing and what our interpretation of what's happening in the world is, that it seems like there's such value in like actually going to that place and actually talking to those people, and to, you know, bringing in sort of like the human element of yourself and Gavin into that conversation, rather than letting these algorithms run and that sort of curation for what's happening.
That's a good point. You're right. It's really hard right now where travel is restricted. Gavin and I, had to pay the price of, 2 weeks of quarantine after that in the middle of the summer, my busiest mural making season. So it's expensive. Truth is expensive, which maybe brings up a separate conversation as we, have to pay for ad-free information or spend time and resources to fact check out various outlets for information that's not a poor man's game. You have to have disposable time and energy to find the truth. Is truth now becoming something that only the elite can afford? Probably a deeper conversation than we wanted to get into here, but I like that you've thought of that. That's true. How much do we know right now?
Yeah, to go off the whole topic of like truth being like an income-based thing or something that you have to pursue, it's so fascinating to think about the people who document history and the people who are the ones who like tell the stories. Do you know what I mean? Like I talk about history a lot that has the potential to disappear within my own work with the photographs that I collect, the queer images that I collect, in the sense of documenting a time and a period of people and messages that have the potential to just vanish because no one's paying attention to them. And that's kind of why I do the things that I do, is because I see the importance in representing and speaking and acting as like, again, like a, as I said, conduit to people and to their stories and things like that. And I just really think it's amazing that you have put yourself through a lot to do that for people.
Mm.
Yeah.
Talk
to keep gushing over you. You're just great.
You're both super kind. We're all doing that. We are all storytellers, all three of us here. We value certain stories, and we have the power to make people care about it. It's a really cool power, and we're using it for good.
Yeah.
That's honestly one of like the most interesting things about, I guess, being an artist, right? Is like you do have power. Like you have like skills, like a visual aptitude to like create these sort of engaging images that pull people in. And that's where like the decision of like, if you're going to be pulling people in, if you're going to be like hypnotizing people with your work, if you're going to be drawing people into this world, what is that world that you want to draw people into? And Ryan, I like that you mentioned the idea of like these like memories and this history that can disappear, because that's so much about what we're doing in the book, like that the personal experience of Ed being a person who's forgetting things and who's losing their history is so much also about our culture and us as like a larger people losing histories and forgetting things, and what's lost in that, and particularly what's lost in the stories that get in that we never tell, as we like to say. It's really interesting where like you do have this ability, and a lot of times I feel like it's hard earned, and it takes a lot of effort in order to like create these sort of stories and create these images and to make this work. And so much of that is like a like constant dialogue with the public about what, like, understanding what's important to me and understanding what's important to other people, and listening as much as I'm trying to say anything. And like so much of this book right here really is like drawn from our community. In Ryan and I's case, that's like a lot of like our local queer community in Calgary. But I think that the work that you're doing, like reaching out and like really extending yourself, taking these huge trips, taking these huge risks and like financial burdens to go and volunteer in refugee camps, and step into a place that's like a like contested zone where there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of risk that you're taking on it. I think that's a really commendable thing that you do.
Well, thank you again. Just like constantly like saying nice things.
We love you podcast. We just keep telling you how great you
love
are.
This. You should charge. If I am lucky, again, I just feel grateful. There are a lot of people who have also done cool stuff like this, and I think they've given me a grid for going places and confidence that the risk is worth the reward. It certainly has been for me, and I think that if I can be a person in Calgary who does crazy shit every once in a while and inspires other people to do it too, that would be reward enough. There is so much out there. I think like when you have a conviction that something is worth your time, when you lean into it, I think you're rewarded, even if you pay a deep price for it. There's just, and I'm sure you can relate to that feeling, like just the stories that pull you forward and you're like, I have to tell this story. I don't feel like I really premeditated which stories I would tell. You're kind of there, and the stories pick you. The sense, I mean, I get from you, Kyle, that the story is part of you. It was like dying to be told, and if you never told it, it would just scream inside of you your entire life. Like there's something about there's something that chooses us to share certain things. For me, it was the plight of Syrian refugees and the protesters in Seattle, that conflict right there. Yeah, your book is like a very personal story for you.
Yeah, I actually, I was just watching a little interview with David Bowie earlier today. I popped up across something, and Bowie was talking about how like whenever you're like working on something, you need to remember like where that came from and how there was something inside of you that just like thought like, if I can tell this story, if I can communicate this thing, I'll have a greater understanding of myself and how I exist in the world. And then went on to talk about how like if you're ever in a place where you feel really safe in what you're doing, you're probably not in the right area, and you want to be in that zone where like you're wading out into the water and your feet are barely touching the ground anymore, and like that's the point where you can start to do something really exciting. And based on the panic attacks that I had prior to releasing the Kickstarter of this book, I think we're in the right space.
Sorry to interject, but I really love what you said about a story chooses you. I think that's actually such a beautiful way of putting it. And it's something that I actually never thought of. And, you know, I've been saying it for a few days now that there's something so amazing about making like a body of work like these books, or like your project as well, that you see the fluidity and how it kind of changes with you and your understanding of what is happening around that. And also how it applies to you as a person is constantly in flux and like moving with you. And it's amazing that we as artists and creators get that opportunity to capture that, not only for ourselves, but also for the public. You know, I talk a lot about familiarity as being something that's so crucial to understanding. And it's so crucial for people to see themselves depicted in things and see themselves like represented in periods of like movements and periods of unrest, and also in moments of joy and beauty and tragedy and heartache and all of these things. It's so important to find your story in other people, because that's how you create bonds and relationships and familiarity and understanding. And I think that's such a key point, is understanding is so vital to what you do and like why you are driven to create these pieces of work that document such a hidden part of the world.
I think we're on the same page with that one. Pun intended. That, yeah, it's the stories in front of you, the things that draw you to certain stories. Kyle, like everything you just said right now, I'm like, yes, it is the unknown. It is what you could be. It's what you don't know yet. It's the part of you that you know you want to become or maybe understand that you don't yet. It's the grayed out part of the video game map that you don't know what is there until your character walks there, you know? And I think it's so wonderful that we get to be storytellers and artists as a full-time hustle. We get to spend all of our time going into the unknown and discovering stuff. And I don't know, I mean, it is a blessing and a curse, definitely, that we live in this place of chaos and, you know, the dark, misty bits that we crawl through and we're like, oh, this could be valuable. And we like bring it back for other folks, you know, who may or may not appreciate it because they don't know they need it yet. But this is what we do. This is what we decided to do with our lives.
That's the drop. The central thesis is like, it's beautiful, but it burns and it hurts and it costs a lot for you to like to give it to people, but it's worth it every time, because like the way that creatives see the world is beautiful, and it's so elaborate and it's so different, and it's amazing to realize that you don't see things the way that other people see things, and that you can give them those points of view and those thoughts. It's very powerful.
That's real. Yeah, it's like well, especially with narrative. Have you ever heard the quote, I'm forgetting who it is, but that fiction can be truer than prose, I think is how it goes. But like that idea that a narrative not only tells you what is, but also shows you a way to go. And what you said about community, this is arcing back to, separation in this time of social distancing. Are we able to interact with our herd enough right now? I think a lot of the primordial panic that a lot of people are reporting right now is because there is something in our brain saying, watch out, you're isolated. You're not going to know if you're sane, if your behavior is sane and safe, without the constant feedback of your herd around you telling you how to go, how to grow, and how to be. And we're going to have to find creative ways to keep journeying together and keep making our story together. I think it's so cool that your book is coming out in this time. If there was ever disposable time for people to sink into a narrative, this would be it.
And good news for them, book 2 is significantly longer than book 1, so they can settle into it for a little while. I also just wanted to tie back into something that Ryan mentioned about like, like the process of like art making is like almost like, I think of it as sometimes like a crystallization of like a moment in time. And a lot of times I don't think that you even know entirely what you're creating and what you're outputting. And it's so interesting to come back to that work then, months or years later and see the things that you were working through that you've like now are further ahead on. You can look back and see like, oh, I was thinking about that there. I was processing that there. I was like working through all of these things in this work in like an unconscious way that I'm not even fully aware of. I think it's wild the way that like the automatic component of art making intersects with the intentional.
Yeah,
that's real. Yeah. I don't think we always know why things compel us to make them. Yeah, I was listening to the TED Talk by Elizabeth Gilbert. She's a writer, and she was talking about, you probably heard it. It's a good one. Look it up. I haven't read her book, but
didn't she do Eat, Pray, Love as well?
She did.
Yeah.
She did. Yeah. She did. So I haven't read it.
I
don't know.
But she has another one. Sorry to interrupt you. I can't remember what it is, but it's something about like unlocking a potential or like a soul searching. I can't remember. Cut this.
Yeah. I forget too. I want to call it like Dirty Girls or something, but I think it's about like women in prostitution in like the turn of the century or something, and like stereotypes about women and sexuality and things like that. Anyway, her TED Talk, which I have listened to, she talks about how in Greek times, the genius was perceived to be this spirit or this supernatural thing that roamed through the earth and looked for the artists to possess, basically, and to do its bidding. And there were several geniuses. So if someone like gave a stellar performance, people would praise the genius that inspired them to do so. Now we look at an artist and we say, they are a genius. It was a work of genius. They are the genius. Her point was, we put a lot of pressure on artists now to be geniuses and to like generate these ideas. And like, I don't know, I've never been able to really come up with a good idea by just like sitting in a chair and being like, I'm not getting out of this chair until I have a killer idea that's going to change the world. Like, it usually picks me. Like, I'm out there living my messy, sloppy human life, and things break my heart and things make me fall in love, and they are this human experience, and it comes out into art. And that is the truest art that I make, is the stuff that like kind of happens to you, that chooses you, that decides to be told, the things that move your heart, and you're like, this must be made. And you just hope you do it justice. You feel like a servant making something bigger than you take place, you know? At least that's how it feels for me, though I'm sure that's not everybody's
It's the
experience.
exact same experience for me, where the most detailed, the most beautiful, the most tragic, the most intense have just kind of always fallen out of me. For lack of a more elaborate understanding, it can
Like
happen.
childbirth.
Yeah, it's just like, and it's just like, yes, an ugly baby that I now have to put on a shelf and love for a few months, and then I can move on to the next baby. But it really is. It's just something where like there's this demand and there's this need and this presence, and you just know that it has to be there, and it has to be physical, and it has to present itself in ways that are like real and beyond just like a theory and a thought. I remember getting when I got the idea for my archive, actually, Mirrors and Windows, I got it. I remember specifically just like being in the shower and then falling and then thinking about like thinking about the gravity and the loss and the intergenerational panic that I was feeling all within one moment. And then suddenly I fell to the ground and I realized that I wanted so deeply to relate and have like a physical manifestation of these kind of overarching like guilt and shame and like pain that I felt from not feeling connected to my community and like not feeling connected to people of my past. And, you know, like I always talk about queer genealogy and the idea that we're all, you know, as queer people, we're always connected to each other and we always can find each other in many, many different ways in terms of familiarity, sexuality, kinship. And like, I hope that everybody finds their kinship because it is so crucial. Kind of went on a tangent there. I'm not quite sure how my brain went that direction, but
To me, it's super related. I mean, you're talking about belonging and sense of home and truth, right? That what is more human than that?
Absolutely. No, we have to really humanize each other in order to like find the beauty and find the hard parts and like the detail, right?
Yeah, I think that's like to tie back into talking about like, you know, crystallizing moments as an artist. Like I think that's, you know, so much of where I got through really dark times was like by connecting with art from other people who had felt those things and who had been through those periods. And it's particularly helpful to when those moments have growth involved as well. I remember like I've had really powerful connections with like Florence and the Machine's music. Florence Welch is incredible, and like How Big, How Blue, How Beautiful being this like
Well, I brought that album to you.
Ryan gave me that album, and it's
that's my breakdown album, but you can have it.
Yeah. Then there's like this follow-up album that's just like so full of hope and joy, and then just like, you know, but because you could connect to that person so deeply at this moment, you know that there's that potential in there for that. I thought that was like such a beautiful follow-up. Like that's such a gift. And like that's actually something that I like keep in mind as we're working on this project, where like book one really came out of this super depressed period where and it is a very heavy book, and we've chosen to take on some really heavy things, but there's like this idea of like almost marking out a path through that and like creating some sort of lighted guideway that people can follow through in just an emotional sense, I think is so important to what we do.
Yeah. Ceremonials, that's my favorite album by Florence and the Machine. That is like every song is a prayer. Every song is my like primal scream. I'm like, yes, this is like putting into words, right? It's such a healing thing.
Oh yeah. And it's that album too. It's like, it's Florence, I believe she's mourning her grandmother in that one. And I love this way of like finding such beauty and like meaningful prayer and voice in such a like time of period of mourning and like pain. You know, it's amazing to think about the way that artists approach everything in that kind of way, right?
That's real.
Yeah, we've been talking so much about, you know, the fact that it has been 2 years since our first book, and like in those 2 years, just so much has changed. And the way that I look at book one compared to book two is like just the amount of things that have happened in terms of like mental health and gender and sexuality and like relationships and friendships and all of these things. And like, you know, drag as well is a huge thing that like I didn't even have that connection to the community, to the queer community, until the book had already come out. And then like me and Kyle always joke that we had no friends until the book came out. and it took doing this and like executing something with all the pain and the panic to find ourselves in it all. And that's just so beautiful and so punishing, but so special.
It is. Yeah. Vulnerability is the birthplace of connection and your greatest rejection, to quote Brené Brown.
That's a good
Yeah, I also just wanted to tag on. I was like pointing furiously when you mentioned the idea of like genius as this like entity that inhabits people, because there's like this esoteric idea that people don't have ideas, ideas have people, and I am like so into that sort of understanding of the way that like we interact with our own thoughts. This like sort of like really like individualist, like master of our own domain kind of region of the brain. I find that hard to grab onto. I think this idea of us like all kind of participating in this like ever-changing sort of, I almost view it as like this spark of life that's like being carried forward, and like as if it was like a scan being passed over reality. Like we're all just participating in this like blink of a moment where we can affect change, and where we're like interacting with the reality that we're within. I don't know where exactly I'm going with that statement, but I just thought that it was really fascinating the way that you framed genius and how that connects in with sort of like larger ideas about how I think we interact with the world.
Yeah, I love that. We're talking about this. This is like one of my favorite topics. Rarely do I feel like the ideas originate inside of me. I feel like they're coming from somewhere else, or something, someone else, and they kind of pick me, and I choose to do it or not. I agree. There is something bigger than us. I mean, Carl Jung would probably say there's like ancestral memories, or like something that's calling you forward into what you could be, versus just what you are. And there's a lot to support that, I would say.
I completely agree. And yeah, I don't really have anything to add other than just like, yeah. I see it, I relate, I understand. And like, damn, we're such great people.
This is great. We're at about like 40 to 50 minutes right now, so I think we're in like a great area to cut things. I'm sure Sam will find a great spot to cut there. We could probably do our outros and drop where people can find us, et cetera, et cetera. So I can go into that right away here. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. This has been really lovely, and
I feel like we just started talking about the cool stuff, so we'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, for episodes to come. The three of us, I feel like we could talk about esoterics and beauty forever, right?
We are artists. I mean,
what else are we good for? If not
right?
This?
Especially I got nothing but time right now.
You know what? You get me started on like the pursuit of reality and the pursuit of truth and what is true and what is good. Oh my goodness! Like,
oh my god, forever. Episode 4. Come on.
Go.
I mean, yeah. What gets us out of bed in the morning? There's something bigger than us.
There must be.
I think we're all slogging toward it.
Well, Nicole, if people want to see more of your slog towards truth, where can they find you? Where can people see your work and keep posted with what you do?
You can observe my slogging on Instagram at Nicole Wolf Design. So that's Nicole, Nicole, Wolf, just like the animal, design. And my website is under the same handle. You can drop me a message and we can talk esoteric stuff all you want. And then if you want to see more about the Fall of Chop project, the Seattle protest zone, you can head over to the Arts Commons website. My writing is still there, the blog with Gavin's photographs and my illustrations are still up there. And you can enjoy reading people's accounts.
Check the blog. The blog is incredible. The stories that you have there, and like your conversations with Raz Simone are incredible, and like love it. And you can also see your work all over the city as well.
Yes, I do keep the lights on through commercial art. So if you have a dope mural, or you need a commission painting, or you just want me to tattoo something on your body, you should definitely hit me up. I will take your money anytime.
Now, if that's not a sales pitch, I don't know what is. Thank you again so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi.